The pine needles crunched beneath Liam Mercer's boots as he navigated the dense mountain terrain. 3 days into his week-long solo hike, he had ventured further than any marked trail on his weathered map. The forest had grown thicker, quieter, almost otherworldly in its stillness. Just the way he liked it. For years since leaving his research position at the university, Liam had found peace in these remote woods. His cabin, a half-day's hike downhill, represented his rejection of a world that had grown too noisy, too complicated. Out here, life made sense. Until it didn't. The flash came first, brilliant blue-white light filtering through the trees ahead. Then the sound, a deep, bass rumble that he felt in his chest before his ears registered it. Birds erupted from the canopy in panicked clouds. What the hell? Liam muttered, instinctively ducking behind a massive fallen oak. His rational mind cycled through possibilities: lightning strike, small aircraft crash, military test gone wrong. But none explained the eerie silence that followed, or the faint shimmer now visible through the trees, like heat rising from summer pavement. Curiosity overcame caution. Liam advanced slowly, navigating through underbrush toward a clearing he didn't remember being on any Forest Service map. The trees thinned, revealing a perfect circle approximately 30 feet across. At its center lay a shallow crater, the earth scorched in spiral patterns. And in the crater's heart, a woman. At least, she appeared woman-shaped from a distance. Liam approached cautiously, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. She lay motionless, wearing what looked like form-fitting armor of an iridescent material that shifted colors with each step he took toward her. Parts of it had cracked, revealing skin beneath, pale blue with a subtle luminescence. "Hello? Can you hear me?" His voice sounded absurdly normal in the abnormal scene. No response. He knelt beside her, noting the delicate features that seemed almost human but not quite, cheekbones too high, eyes too large beneath closed lids, a pattern of subtle ridges tracing her hairline where silver-white hair emerged. A thin line of deep violet liquid, blood, trickled from her temple. "You're hurt," he whispered, reaching instinctively to check for a pulse at her neck. The moment his fingertips touched her skin, her eyes snapped open, startling violet irises with pupils like liquid mercury. She gasped, her body arching upward as though shocked. Her hand shot out, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. Words poured from her lips in a language unlike anything Liam had ever heard, melodic and complex, with sounds that seemed physically impossible for a human throat to produce. "I don't understand," Liam said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I won't hurt you. You're injured." She stared at him, comprehension slowly dawning in those alien eyes. Her grip on his wrist loosened but didn't release. When she spoke again, her voice was different, halting, as though each word required immense effort. "Where am I?" The words were accented but unmistakably English. "Northern California wilderness. About 50 miles from any town." Liam hesitated. "You're not from around here, are you?" A faint, pained smile curved her lips. "No. Not from around here." Her eyes drifted to the sky visible through the tree canopy. "Far. Very far." She attempted to sit up but winced, her hand moving to her side where the armor had fractured most severely. "Careful," Liam cautioned, supporting her shoulder. "You shouldn't move too quickly." "Cannot stay here," she insisted, her speech becoming more fluid with each word. "They will track the impact. They will come." "Who will come? What's your name?" She looked directly at him then, something like wonder crossing her features. "You should not be able to wake me." "The stasis field." Her gaze dropped to where his hand still touched her arm. "How did you break it?" "I just touched you. I'm Liam. Liam Mercer." "Talia," she replied after a moment's hesitation. "I am called Talia." She glanced around the clearing, then back to the sky. We must leave this place, Liam Mercer. It is not safe. You're hurt. Let me help you to my cabin. It's a few hours' walk, but... Yes. Shelter. Distance from the landing site. She nodded, then attempted to stand again, this time accepting his support. Your dwelling has barriers? Walls? It's pretty solid. Off-grid, if that helps. Talia nodded as though this confirmed something important. It will do for now. Until I can determine. She swayed suddenly, her knees buckling. Liam caught her, surprised by how light she felt despite her height nearly matching his own 6 feet. Hey, easy. Maybe we should rest first. No time, she whispered, her eyes focusing and unfocusing. The ship's beacon will activate soon. Standard protocol when a royal transport crashes. Royal? Liam echoed, but Talia had already slipped into unconsciousness, her head lolling against his shoulder. Liam stood in the crater, holding an unconscious alien woman who spoke of royal transports and hunting parties, and made a decision that would forever alter his carefully constructed solitude. Gently, he gathered Talia into his arms and turned toward home, the distant clouds gathering over the mountains as though the sky itself knew something momentous had occurred. Liam's cabin appeared through the trees like a mirage after the grueling 4-hour trek. His shoulders ached from carrying Talia, who had drifted in and out of consciousness during their journey. Each time her eyes opened, they darted skyward with unmistakable dread before closing again. The cabin was modest but sturdy, a testament to Liam's desire for both solitude and self-sufficiency. Solar panels lined the south-facing roof, a small greenhouse addition protected hardy vegetables from mountain frosts. Inside, the open-concept space featured hand-built furniture, well-stocked bookshelves, and the technological remnants of his former life, a powerful laptop, satellite communications equipment, and a small lab table covered with soil samples and microscopes. He gently laid Talia on his bed, uncertain how to proceed. Her armor, once seamlessly integrated, now resembled cracked ceramic in places. The violet blood had dried along her temple, contrasting starkly against her pale blue skin. "Let's get you cleaned up," he murmured, though she couldn't hear him. Liam dampened a cloth with warm water and carefully wiped the blood from her face. As he worked, he couldn't help but study her alien features. The subtle ridges along her hairline resembled a delicate crown of sorts. Her ears, partially hidden by silvery hair, tapered to slight points. Most striking were the faint, phosphorescent patterns that seemed to pulse beneath her skin, visible only when the cabin's shadows deepened. Her eyes opened suddenly, capturing him mid-observation. "Your dwelling," she whispered, glancing around. "We are safe here?" "As safe as anywhere, I guess." Liam set the cloth aside. "Though I'd feel better knowing what we're hiding from." Talia struggled to sit up, wincing as her armor shifted. "This exosuit is damaged beyond self-repair. I need to remove it." "I can help," Liam offered, then hesitated. "If that's appropriate." "I don't want to. The biological differences between us make your concern unnecessary," she said pragmatically. "But I appreciate the sentiment. There are release mechanisms at the shoulders and sides." Following her instructions, Liam helped remove the fractured armor pieces. Beneath, she wore a simple bodysuit of shimmering fabric. The armor itself was fascinating, lightweight yet incredibly strong, with circuitry patterns that reminded him of his work in materials science before he'd abandoned academia. "This technology is incredible," he couldn't help remarking. "The way it's designed to protect while remaining flexible." "It failed in its purpose," Talia said quietly, examining a particularly damaged section. "The atmospheric entry should have been controlled. Something interfered with the ship's systems." Liam placed the armor pieces on his workbench. "You keep mentioning they and hunters. Who exactly is after you?" Talia's gaze met his, evaluating. After a moment, she seemed to reach a decision. I come from a world called Elysian, third planet in the Cygnus 437 system. Her voice strengthened as she spoke. My lineage, what you would call a royal house, has guided our people for millennia. 6 standard months ago, a coalition of military leaders staged a coup, massacring most of my family. She looked down at her hands, which trembled slightly. I was attending a diplomatic summit off-world when it happened. My security detail managed to get me to an escape vessel, but we were pursued across 3 star systems. The final attack damaged our ship beyond recovery. My guards initiated emergency protocols, putting me in stasis and setting course for the nearest habitable world outside our territorial boundaries. Earth, Liam supplied. Yes. Your Earth. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Considered too primitive for formal contact by Elysian standards. No offense intended. None taken. We are pretty primitive in the grand scheme of things, Liam said wryly. The stasis field should have kept me unconscious until full recovery, detectable only by those with genetic markers matching my bloodline. Her eyes locked with his. Yet you woke me with a touch. This should not be possible. Liam shrugged. Maybe your equipment was more damaged than you thought? Perhaps. But she didn't sound convinced. Over the next 2 days, Talia regained strength rapidly. Her injuries, serious by human standards, healed visibly each day. She adapted quickly to the cabin, fascinated by some aspects of human life, particularly Liam's books and his hand-built furniture, while finding others amusingly archaic. His water filtration system prompted a 30-minute explanation of molecular purification techniques used on her world. On the 3rd night, as they sat before the fireplace sharing a simple meal, Talia's expression grew somber. They will have detected the crash by now, she said, setting down her bowl. Standard protocol would dispatch a recovery team for a downed royal transport. How would they find you? Space is enormous, and Earth is just one planet among billions. The beacon, she explained. All royal vessels contain emergency locators. Even destroyed, fragments would broadcast our position. Liam considered this. How much time do we have? Difficult to calculate without knowing their starting position. Days, perhaps. A week at most. And when they arrive? Talia met his gaze directly. They will retrieve me, eliminate evidence of my presence, she paused, and neutralize any local witnesses. The implication hung in the silence between them. You mean they'd kill me, Liam said flatly. Yes. Her hand moved across the table, hesitantly covering his. The first intentional contact she'd initiated. Which is why I must leave before they arrive. Your involvement was accidental. You should not suffer for your kindness. Her touch sent an unexpected warmth through him. Despite the alien nature of her skin, slightly cooler than human temperature, with that subtle luminescence, the gesture felt profoundly intimate. Where would you go? He asked. You're still recovering, and you know nothing about surviving on Earth. I have survived worse circumstances, she replied, though uncertainty shadowed her eyes. Outside, night had fully descended, the forest transforming into a cathedral of darkness and starlight. Through the cabin's windows, the cosmos that had delivered Talia to his doorstep glittered with cold indifference to their predicament. I won't let you face this alone, Liam said, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. Whatever's coming, we'll figure it out together. The silver in her pupils seemed to expand, her expression softening with an emotion he couldn't name. You humans, she whispered, so fierce in your loyalties, even to strangers who bring danger to your door. Maybe not all humans, Liam answered with a half-smile. But this one, at least. As Talia gazed at him across the firelight, something shifted in the space between them, an unspoken recognition that their fates had become inexplicably intertwined. Dawn broke with unusual stillness. No birdsong, no rustling of animals in the underbrush, just the soft crackle of embers dying in the fireplace. Liam woke immediately alert, his instincts honed by years in the wilderness sensing the unnatural quiet. Talia was already up, standing by the window with her back to him, her silver hair catching the first rays of sunlight. "Something's wrong," she said without turning. "The forest creatures have gone silent." Liam joined her at the window. Through the morning mist, the trees stood like sentinels, motionless in the windless morning. Could be a predator passing through. Bears or mountain lions can clear an area pretty quickly. No. Her voice was certain. This silence feels deliberate. She pressed her palm against the glass, and for a moment, the faint bioluminescent patterns beneath her skin pulsed more intensely. They've sent a probe. Not a full team yet, just reconnaissance. How can you tell? Our species evolved from apex predators with heightened sensory perception, she explained. I can feel the electronic signature of Elysian technology. It's faint, but distinctive. Liam's hand instinctively moved to the rifle mounted above the door, a precaution against the occasional aggressive wildlife. Talia noted the gesture with a sad smile. Your weapon would be ineffective. The probe is likely automated, shielded against primitive ballistics. Then what do we do? Talia's expression hardened with resolve. We need to retrieve something from the crash site. The journey back to the impact crater took longer than expected. They moved cautiously, Talia frequently stopping to scan the canopy or press her hand against tree trunks, as though the forest itself might whisper secrets to her. Twice she pulled Liam into sudden cover, once as a metallic sphere the size of a baseball hummed overhead, and again when a distant flash illuminated the forest briefly. What are we looking for exactly? Liam whispered as they finally approached the clearing. The ship's core database, Talia replied, eyes fixed on the crater. If intact, it contains my genetic signature and access codes to Elysian defense networks. In the wrong hands. It would legitimize whoever holds it, Liam finished. They could claim they have royal authority. Precisely. She sounded impressed by his understanding. The crater had changed since their last visit. The spiral patterns in the soil had faded, and small metal fragments littered the ground. At the center, a portion of earth had been excavated, revealing a broken panel of the same iridescent material as Talia's armor. She knelt beside it, her fingers tracing symbols invisible to Liam's eyes. The core chamber was breached, but not completely destroyed. Her hands dug into the soil, eventually extracting a crystalline object roughly the size of a playing card. Relief flooded her features. The memory crystal survived. A high-pitched whine suddenly cut through the air. Talia's head snapped up, her eyes widening. Run, she commanded, shoving the crystal into a pocket of the earth clothes Liam had given her. They sprinted through the forest as three metallic spheres descended into the clearing behind them. Liam heard a sound like electrical discharge, followed by the smell of ozone. A tree to their right splintered, its trunk glowing red where some energy weapon had struck it. Talia grabbed Liam's arm, yanking him behind a massive boulder. Those aren't probes, she gasped. They're hunter-seekers. Armed. I thought you said they'd send a team. The usurpers are being cautious. Automated first wave to confirm my presence before risking personnel. Her eyes met his, fierce with determination. If we can disable them, it might buy us more time before they send actual hunters. Disable them how? Talia's gaze fell to a stream running nearby. Water, she said. These early models aren't fully waterproofed. Help me divert the stream. Working frantically, they used fallen branches and stones to channel water toward a natural depression between them and the pursuing spheres. The hunter-seekers moved methodically through the forest, their sensors sweeping in patterns Talia seemed to anticipate. They're following standard search protocols, she whispered. When I give the signal, we'll break cover. They'll pursue us across the water trap. And if they don't fall for it? The ghost of a smile touched her lips. Then we improvise. Ready? Before Liam could answer, Talia burst from their hiding place. The spheres immediately detected her, their lights pulsing red as they accelerated in pursuit. Liam followed, his heart hammering against his ribs as energy bolts sizzled past his head. They reached the water trap, leaping across the narrow part Talia had left intact. Two of the hunter-seekers followed directly through the deeper water. Electrical discharges immediately arced across their surfaces, they wobbled mid-air, then dropped like stones. The third sphere halted at the water's edge. It's adapting, Talia warned. She snatched a stone from the ground and hurled it with inhuman precision. The projectile struck the sphere's sensor array, momentarily disorienting it. The machine drifted over the water, not enough to submerge, but enough for Liam to act. He swung a heavy branch like a baseball bat, connecting with the metallic surface and sending it crashing into the stream. The resulting electrical discharge lit up the forest floor, leaving the sphere a smoking ruin. Nice swing, Talia commented, her breathing barely elevated despite their sprint. Baseball scholarship, Liam replied with a grin. Never thought it would help me fight alien robots. Their moment of triumph was short-lived. A distant rumble, like thunder but more rhythmic, echoed through the mountains. We should go, Talia said, suddenly serious. The hunter-seekers would have transmitted confirmation of my presence before we disabled them. What was that sound? Transport ships entering your atmosphere. Her eyes met his, grave and determined. They're coming in force now. Back at the cabin, they worked silently, gathering supplies. Liam packed his emergency kit, first aid supplies, water purification tablets, fire starters, and a topographical map of the region. Talia examined the memory crystal under the light, her fingers tracing its facets. If I can access a communications array powerful enough, I might contact loyalist forces, she said. There are resistance cells that escaped the initial purge. My satellite equipment might work, Liam offered. Too primitive, unfortunately. She tucked the crystal away. We need to reach a population center with more advanced technology. Nearest city is about 60 miles south, Liam said, studying his map. But that's exactly where they'd expect us to go. Then we head north, Talia decided. Through the most difficult terrain. As Liam continued packing, Talia moved to stand before him. For a moment, she simply studied his face, as though memorizing its features. You could still walk away, she said softly. Leave now, go east or west. I would lead them north, give you time to escape. The offer hung between them, logical and tempting. Yet Liam knew his answer before she'd finished speaking. Not a chance. He zipped his pack closed with finality. Besides, you'd probably get lost without a wilderness guide. She stepped closer, the space between them charged with unspoken thoughts. You are a curious man, Liam Mercer. On my world, self-preservation is considered the highest instinct. Maybe that's why you crashed here, he replied, voice low. The universe has a strange way of bringing the right people together. Her hand rose to his cheek, cool fingers tracing his jawline with wonder. The luminescent patterns beneath her skin pulsed in time with her quickening heartbeat. When she spoke again, her voice carried a new softness. Perhaps it does. Outside, the distant thunder grew closer, and the forest darkened under gathering storm clouds, or perhaps something else entirely blocking the sun. Their moment of connection suspended in time, they stood at the threshold of decision, two beings from different worlds united by circumstance and something neither could yet name. The northern trail grew steeper as Liam and Talia ascended into the high country. 3 days of hard hiking had put 20 miles between them and the cabin, taking them deep into wilderness few humans ever traversed. Each night, They'd watched strange lights moving across the distant sky, search patterns methodically covering the territory. They're being thorough, Talia observed on the fourth evening, as they huddled in a small cave. Outside, rain fell in sheets, providing temporary cover from aerial surveillance. On Elysian, this would be considered a level 5 manhunt. Reserved only for the highest value targets. Should I be flattered on your behalf? Liam asked, feeding kindling into their small fire. Hardly. Her smile was thin. It means they're desperate. The memory crystal contains more than just my genetic signature, it holds evidence of their treachery. Communications, execution orders, plans for dismantling constitutional protections. Liam studied her profile in the firelight. Something had shifted between them since their escape from the cabin. A tension, electric and undeniable, that neither acknowledged directly. Instead, it manifested in lingering glances, in the way Talia's hand sometimes brushed his when passing equipment, in how they slept progressively closer each night. You never told me what happens if you manage to contact your loyalist forces, he said. What's the endgame here? Talia was silent for a long moment, her violet eyes reflecting the flames. Best case scenario? A loyalist fleet arrives, extracts me, and uses the evidence to rally support among neutral factions. Worst case. She sighed. The usurpers find us first, retrieve the crystal, and execute anyone associated with me. And if the loyalists do come, what happens to Earth? To this region? A discrete extraction. Perhaps some limited memory alteration for any humans directly involved. Her eyes met his, understanding his unasked question. Your people aren't ready for official contact, Liam. The shock would be destabilizing. And me, he pressed. Would my memories be altered too? She looked away. That would be standard protocol. The revelation hung between them, altering the cave's atmosphere more drastically than the smoke from their small fire. Liam absorbed this, his face carefully neutral despite the hollow feeling expanding in his chest. I see, he said finally. It's not what I want, Talia added softly. But my people's laws regarding pre-contact civilizations are absolute. Before Liam could respond, a sound outside, subtle but distinct from the rainfall, caught their attention. Talia extinguished the fire with a handful of dirt while Liam readied his hunting knife, a pitiful defense, but better than nothing. They pressed against the cave wall, listening. Footsteps, too deliberate for an animal, approached the entrance. Talia's hand found Liam's in the darkness, her grip tight with tension. A beam of light cut through the cave mouth, sweeping the interior. Then a voice, human, male, and completely unexpected. Hello? Anyone in here? I saw your fire from the ridge. Liam and Talia exchanged glances. After a hesitant moment, Liam responded. Who's asking? Name's Garrett. Forest Service. Got reports of unusual activity in the area. The figure stepped partially into view, a man in his 40s wearing a rain-drenched uniform. Mind if I come in out of this downpour? Liam nodded cautiously, positioning himself slightly in front of Talia, who had pulled up her jacket hood to partially conceal her features. The ranger stepped inside, shaking water from his coat. Nasty night to be camping, he commented, eyes taking in their minimalist setup. His gaze lingered on Talia, whose alien features were difficult to completely disguise even in the dim light. You folks okay? Any injuries or supplies needed? We're fine, Liam answered. Just waiting out the storm. Garrett nodded slowly, his expression shifting subtly. That's good. Though I'm afraid I need to ask you to come with me. There's a... He hesitated, a wildfire risk warning. We're evacuating all backcountry hikers. In this rain? Liam challenged. The ranger's hand moved toward his belt. I'm afraid I must insist. Talia suddenly stood, her hood falling back. Enough pretense. You're not human. The ranger's face remained impassive for exactly 3 seconds before a smile spread across his features, too wide, too mechanical. Perceptive, Your Highness. His voice had changed, all pretense of humanity abandoned. The Regent will be pleased we've located you so quickly. The Regent, Talia spat the word. You mean the traitor General Vorax. The legitimate ruler of Elysian now, the disguised hunter corrected. He tapped a device on his wrist. Extraction team, I've confirmed target location. Proceeding with capture. Liam lunged forward, driving his shoulder into the false ranger's midsection. Despite his human appearance, the hunter barely budged, his density clearly greater than any Earth creature. With casual strength, he shoved Liam aside, sending him crashing against the cave wall. Primitive, the hunter commented, reaching for Talia. She moved with unexpected speed, driving the heel of her palm upward into his jaw with enough force that a sickening crack echoed through the cave. The hunter staggered, his human disguise flickering momentarily to reveal glimpses of his true form, taller, more angular, with armor integrated into gray-blue skin. Run! Talia shouted to Liam, diving past the disoriented hunter toward the cave entrance. Outside, the storm had intensified, lightning illuminating the rugged landscape in strobing flashes. They sprinted through mud and rain, Talia leading with unerring direction despite the darkness. Behind them, an inhuman roar signaled the hunter's recovery and pursuit. The extraction team will be converging on his signal, Talia gasped as they ran. We need higher ground, somewhere I can amplify the crystal's output. Liam pointed toward a rocky prominence silhouetted against the storm clouds. There. It's the highest point for miles. They changed course, climbing now more than running, hands finding purchase on wet rock as they ascended. Twice Liam slipped, saved only by Talia's quick reflexes and inhuman strength. The storm intensified around them, as though nature itself recognized the cosmic significance of their flight. Reaching the summit, they found themselves on a flat expanse of stone perhaps 30 feet across, with sheer drops on 3 sides. Lightning struck a nearby peak, briefly illuminating 3 figures climbing toward them, all wearing the false appearance of forest rangers, all moving with the unnatural precision of Elysian hunters. We're trapped, Liam realized, the finality of their situation sinking in. Talia pulled the memory crystal from her pocket, its facets glowing with internal light that pulsed in response to her touch. Not yet. This can still transmit a distress signal, but I need time to activate it. How much time? 2 minutes, perhaps 3. Liam looked at the approaching hunters, then back to Talia. A decision crystallized in his mind, clear and absolute. I'll give you that time. Her eyes widened with understanding. Liam, no. They'll kill you. Maybe. He managed a smile. But they'll have to catch me first. Before she could protest, he kissed her, a swift, desperate press of lips that bridged the vast distance between their worlds. Then he was moving, scrambling down the opposite side of the summit toward the hunters. Hey, he shouted, waving his arms. Looking for someone? The lead hunter immediately changed course, signaling the others to follow. Liam led them on a desperate chase across the treacherous terrain, using his knowledge of the wilderness to maintain distance, drawing them away from Talia. Lightning continued to strike with increasing frequency, illuminating the strange pursuit in staccato freeze frames, Liam leaping across a narrow chasm, hunters moving with mechanical precision through obstacles, rain turning to hail that bounced off stone like bullets. When Liam's foot finally slipped on wet stone, sending him crashing to his knees, he knew his time had run out. The lead hunter approached, disguise now completely abandoned, revealing the true Elysian form, humanoid but distinctly alien, with armor that seemed grown rather than manufactured. Brave, for a primitive, the hunter acknowledged, raising a weapon that hummed with energy. But ultimately futile. A blinding light suddenly washed across the mountainside, brighter than any lightning. The hunters froze, their attention drawn skyward where the storm clouds had parted. Through the opening descended a craft unlike the angular, predatory vessels Liam had glimpsed in the distance days earlier. This ship was organic in design, its hull rippling with the same bioluminescent patterns as Talia's skin. "The Royal Guard," one hunter hissed. "Impossible." The ship's hull irised open, and armored figures rappelled down on lines of energy. The hunters scattered, their coordinated retreat suggesting this was a contingency they had prepared for but never expected to implement. As the new arrivals secured the area, Liam limped back toward the summit. There he found Talia surrounded by guards whose armor, though more ornate, matched the patterns of her own damaged suit. At her feet lay the memory crystal, now dark and apparently depleted. Her eyes found his across the distance, relief and something deeper transforming her features. As he approached, the guards tensed, weapons raised until Talia gestured sharply for them to stand down. "You succeeded," Liam said, taking in the imposing rescue craft. "Yes. The Loyalist forces were closer than I'd dared hope." Her hand reached for his, fingers intertwining. "You nearly died to give me those extra minutes." "Worth it," he replied simply. A tall Elysian in elaborate armor approached, bowing deeply to Talia before speaking in their melodic language. She responded with what sounded like orders, her tone carrying the unmistakable authority of royalty. The guard seemed to protest briefly before acquiescing with another bow. Turning back to Liam, Talia's expression became complicated, joy and sorrow intermingled. "They've confirmed the usurper's forces are in disarray. With the evidence from the crystal and my return, we can reclaim the throne." "That's good news," Liam said, though he recognized the unspoken epilogue. "So I guess this is goodbye." "It doesn't have to be." Her grip on his hand tightened. "I've informed my commander that you're coming with us." Liam blinked in surprise. "What?" "But your laws." "Will need revision," she interrupted. "The old ways haven't served us well. Perhaps it's time Elysian had a fresh perspective." Her free hand rose to touch his cheek. "Someone once told me the universe has a strange way of bringing the right people together." Around them, the mountain continued to witness the impossible, alien rescuers securing an extraterrestrial princess while a storm of both natural and artificial origin raged across the sky. Yet in that moment, all Liam could see was Talia, and the future suddenly unfolding before them, uncertain, dangerous, but infinitely more extraordinary than the solitude he had once embraced. "I'm not packed for interstellar travel," he said finally, a smile breaking through his exhaustion. "We'll manage," Talia replied, drawing him closer as the ship's retrieval beam began to envelop them both. Morning light filtered through the observation dome, painting Liam's quarters in prismatic patterns. After 3 weeks aboard the Elysian vessel Dawnbreaker, he still woke each day with momentary disorientation, the subtle vibration beneath his bed, the air's faintly sweet scent, the ambient light that adjusted to his consciousness state rather than any fixed schedule. Liam sat up, gazing through the transparent ceiling at the stars. Not the Earth stars he'd known all his life, but the constellations of a distant sector he was still learning to navigate. The ship had performed several hyperspatial jumps, each carrying them closer to Elysian and further from everything he'd ever known. He didn't regret his choice. How could he, when each day brought wonders beyond imagination? Still, nostalgia occasionally caught him unaware, longing for the simplicity of his cabin, the familiar chorus of forest sounds, the certainty of solitude. A soft chime announced Talia's arrival moments before the door irised open. She entered wearing formal Elysian attire, a flowing garment that seemed woven from liquid silver, accentuating the luminescent patterns beneath her skin. Since boarding the ship, she'd adopted more of her royal bearing, though never with him. "The council awaits your testimony," she said, crossing to sit beside him on the sleeping platform. "Are you prepared?" Liam nodded, though his stomach tightened at the prospect. The ship contained 23 senior members of Elysian's governing council who had escaped the coup. For days, they debated the unprecedented situation his presence created. Will they accept what I have to say? I'm hardly an expert on interstellar politics. Talia's hand found his, their fingers intertwining in what had become a familiar gesture of comfort. Your perspective is precisely what gives your testimony value. You witnessed the hunters' brutality firsthand. You saw their willingness to violate our most sacred laws regarding pre-contact civilizations. And afterward? Have they decided what happens to me once we reach Elysian? Her expression softened. That remains complicated. There is no precedent. But I've made my position clear. The unspoken depth of that position hung between them. Since their rescue, their relationship had evolved beyond the initial desperation of survival into something more profound. Quiet conversations in the ship's arboretum, shared meals where she taught him Elysian customs, nights spent mapping the unfamiliar stars together. And yes, intimate moments that bridged their physiological differences with unexpected harmony. The court physician has completed your genetic analysis, Talia added, her tone deliberately casual though her eyes watched him carefully. The results explain much. What do you mean? Why you were able to wake me from stasis? Why our biologies are so compatible despite evolving on different worlds? She squeezed his hand. Your DNA contains markers identical to ancient Elysian sequences, fragments our scientists believed were lost millennia ago when explorer vessels went missing. Liam processed this. You're saying my ancestors were Elysian? Some of them. Perhaps a small group that crashed or were stranded on Earth thousands of years ago. They would have integrated with the local population, their distinct traits diluting over generations until only these specific genetic markers remained. Her eyes held his. It explains why the stasis field recognized you as kin. The revelation settled over Liam, not entirely surprising given the ease with which he'd adapted to the ship environment, yet profound in its implications. Does this help my case with the council? Significantly. You're no longer simply a pre-contact primitive we've exposed to advanced technology. You're a descendant of lost Elysians, practically a repatriation case. Her smile turned wry. Politics often finds convenient truths in scientific discoveries. The chamber where the council had convened resembled an amphitheater, with tiered seating surrounding a central platform. Elysian counselors in formal attire studied Liam with expressions ranging from open curiosity to barely concealed disapproval as he took his position at the center. Talia stood on a slightly elevated platform, her royal insignia glowing with internal light. The ritual formalities proceeded in their musical language before switching to English, a courtesy to Liam that several counselors had initially protested. Human Liam Mercer, spoke Elder Nyrith, the silver-skinned senior counselor. You stand before us as both witness and anomaly. Your testimony regarding the actions of General Vorex's forces has been recorded, but questions remain. Liam straightened, acutely aware of his earth clothing amid their formal regalia. I'll answer whatever I can. The Princess Royal has proposed unprecedented changes to our contact protocols, citing your case as evidence of flawed policies. Nyritha's gaze shifted momentarily to Talia. She further suggests that limited, controlled interaction with Earth might benefit both our civilizations. A murmur rippled through the assembly. What say you to this proposal? Nyrith continued. Do you believe your world ready for such knowledge? Liam considered carefully. His answer would shape policies affecting billions on both worlds. Earth isn't a monolith, he began. Some regions, some individuals, are more prepared than others. What I do know is that isolation hasn't served either of our worlds particularly well. Your society's secrecy didn't prevent coup or civil war. Earth's isolation hasn't solved our environmental crises or conflicts. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I'm not advocating immediate full disclosure. But perhaps a middle path exists, carefully controlled contact beginning with scientific exchange, cultural understanding. Something that prepares both societies for eventual integration. Elder Niritha's expression remained unreadable. And your own position in this hypothetical future? The Princess Royal has made additional proposals regarding your status that many find unprecedented. Heat rose in Liam's face as he glanced at Talia, who met his gaze steadily. They had discussed possibilities, but she had been deliberately vague about her formal proposals to the council. My position is secondary to getting the approach right, Liam answered diplomatically. I'm prepared to serve however best bridges our worlds. Even as royal consort? Another counselor interjected bluntly. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices. Talia raised her hand, instantly commanding silence, a gesture that reminded everyone present of her absolute authority despite her youth. The succession laws are clear, she stated, her voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. I may choose any consort who strengthens the royal line. Genetic analysis confirms Liam carries ancient Elysian markers. More importantly, he has demonstrated courage, intelligence, and diplomatic insight, qualities our monarchy desperately needs after generations of isolation led us to civil war. She descended from her platform to stand beside Liam, a calculated move that shocked the traditionalists present. The old ways brought us to the brink of destruction, she continued. We now have an opportunity to forge a new path, one that honors our traditions while embracing necessary evolution. Her hand found Liam's, their fingers intertwining in view of the entire council. My choice is made. The subsequent deliberations lasted hours, with Liam and Talia eventually dismissed while the council debated in private. They walked together through the ship's central arboretum, a massive chamber containing plant species from throughout Elysian territories. You might have warned me about the whole royal consort bombshell, Liam said as they paused beside a pool of luminescent liquid in which floating flowers bloomed and withdrew in rhythmic pulses. Talia's expression turned apologetic. I feared telling you might influence your testimony. The council needed to hear your genuine perspective, not calculated political positioning. And if they reject your proposal? If they demand you choose an Elysian consort instead? Her jaw set with familiar determination. Then I remind them that monarchy is ultimately about power, and the loyalist forces currently securing our return are commanded by those loyal to me, not the council. That sounds dangerously close to how the coup started, Liam observed quietly. Talia's expression softened. You're right, of course. Which is precisely why I need you. She faced him fully. Your perspective prevents me from becoming what we're fighting against. Your different understanding of leadership, of power, it's essential, Liam. So I'm to be your moral compass as well as your consort. His tone was light, but the question serious. You're to be my partner, she corrected, stepping closer. In rebuilding a society that nearly destroyed itself through fear of difference, through isolation. We face reconstruction, reconciliation with rebel factions, and eventually, carefully managed first contact with Earth. Liam considered this future unfolding before him, so far from the solitary existence he'd chosen in his cabin. His hands rose to frame Talia's face, thumbs gently tracing the delicate ridges along her hairline. When I left my research position, I was running away from complexity, he admitted. Now I'm diving into the most complex situation imaginable. Having second thoughts? Her eyes searched his. Not one. He smiled. Though I warn you, I know nothing about court politics or royal protocol. You'll learn, she promised. And in the meantime, your ignorance of our customs might be refreshing. Our court has grown too rigid, too ceremonial. A chime echoed through the arboretum, signaling the council had reached their decision. Talia straightened, once again the royal heir rather than simply the woman he had come to love. Whatever they've decided, she said with quiet intensity, know that my choice remains unchanged. The challenges ahead are formidable, rebuilding a fractured society, integrating you into a world you've never known, eventually establishing contact protocols with Earth. But facing them together. She left the thought unfinished. Is infinitely better than facing them alone, Liam completed. As they walked back toward the council chamber, the vast panorama of stars stretched before them through the ship's observation dome. Among them, still distant but growing closer with each passing moment, shone the star system Talia called home, soon to be his home as well. The universe that had once seemed so empty to Liam, when he'd sought isolation in his forest cabin, now revealed itself as infinitely complex, filled with both danger and possibility. He had left Earth to follow Talia, yet paradoxically, this journey might eventually forge the first true connection between their worlds. Whatever came next, royal politics, reconstruction efforts, the carefully managed revelation of alien life to humanity, they would navigate it together, two beings from different worlds united by circumstance, choice, and the undeniable gravity of love. As the doors to the council chamber irised open before them, Liam squeezed Talia's hand one final time. They stepped forward together, ready to embrace the future that awaited, a future neither could have imagined when a lost princess crashed in a forest clearing and a solitary human woke her with a single touch.